First of all, welcome everybody. As you know, today this is one of a series of thought leadership webinars around the human edge in an AI world. And today, Adrian Swinscoe, Adrian, I'm going to allow you to do your own intro. But before that, Adrian, you're going to walk us through the workforce evolution and why human value is rising in the age of AI. And it's an absolute honor to have you on board. We've known each other for a number of years. And I've always respected your thinking, and it is sometimes bold, but it is mostly beautiful. And we really appreciate your inputs today. And as always, Louise, thank you for getting us all here today. It's not an easy job, and you've done a wonderful job in getting us all on time. And Siobhan, I know you're going to jump in and help me throughout this session. So let's kick off. And Adrian, before I ask the first question, do you want to give us a very brief intro to those who may not know you?
Oh, blimey. So, okay, I'll do my best. I've had a varied work journey. But over the last 17, 18 years, I've been focusing exclusively on the service and experience space. That has led me to do a whole bunch of consultancy work, a bunch of speaking and writing, and research, and all these different sort of things. And I guess and I've seen lots of changes over that time. So I've written lots of blogs, had a podcast since January 2011 before podcasts were cool, and now they're cool. And I'll probably still be podcasting when something else comes along because I just like it. 4 books and a bunch of other kind of things. Anyway, the thing that I'm really interested in, the only thing I'm really interested in, is how do we improve outcomes? How do we make the service and experience we deliver to our customers kind of better? And outcomes is a thing that's a drum I beat all the time. And so there's 3 things I'm interested in: customer outcomes, employee outcomes, and business outcomes. And if we can get all 3 at the same time, then we're doing a good job. And I think that's the objective that we need to aim for. So I'm trying to look for clues in many ways. I don't have a particular framework or an approach that I advocate for. I am just trying to investigate the problem. How do we do this? How do we be better? And so I saw this sign once. You'll love this, Michael, because it was in a microbrewery that I was at, where there was a sign on the wall that said "Wandering but not lost." And that's how I describe my approach to service and experience. I'm wandering but not lost.
So there's a high degree of curiosity in that mind, and I think it's one of the greatest assets for people who are able to inspire is our own degree of curiosity. That's lovely, Adrian, and thank you very much. And just before again we start, we have put up connections to Adrian, how to get in touch with him after the session. And also, I put up there a link to our ebook at the very beginning of our chat. If anybody's interested in downloading it, Digital When I Want It, Human When I Need It, which is really what we would feel is the right strategic approach, not just to AI, but just to technology in general. Adrian, let's kick off.
Okay.
Thank you all for your patience, and it's great. We got a great number of people here from around the world. So the first question I have is that around this, most organizations embedding AI seem to be building the AI plane while it's still flying. Are we moving toward this era of complete uncertainty in our work?
Uh, yes, possibly. So I think we're the first thing I should say is that we are that first of all, I should say that about the AI technology and the platforms and the models and all these different things that are emerging. I think their capabilities are astounding, and the possibilities that they offer are both exciting and extensive. And I think that's the thing. So it's a really interesting kind of time now. But I think we also need to understand that the nature of enterprise software is also fundamentally changing. And I think this is having an impact on our work, as it were. Because prior to the advent of this current AI kind of boom, because we must remember that AI has been around for for years in different forms, and this current form of AI, which is primarily kind of generative AI driven, isn't AI the whole thing. It's just a type of artificial intelligence. However, what it's done is that this Gen AI powered software is sort of changing, because previously enterprise software is, if you realize you had a problem and you needed a tool to help solve it, you would go and do your research, you'd create a short list, you would kind of like speak to a whole bunch of vendors, you'd kind of like, and then go through a procurement process and you would buy it. And you buy one and then you go, okay, fine. You have it implemented, and at the same time you get trained and onboarded and so on and so forth, right? And then you'd have QBRs and you'd have access to support and success, and then you can put feature requests in, or you can get somebody to come in and do some customization. That's fine. The responsibility for the development of that software and the maintenance of it largely sat with the vendor, right? Now, when we've got with this AI powered software, that's changed, because now the responsibility for development and maintenance and customization and monitoring and performance management and all these different things is also shared. It's, the vendor's always kind of trying to build and develop its platform, but also the customization and the monitoring and the management of your own instance sits in-house. That's creating completely different skills kind of required to maintain those kind of the software. So that's kind of one kind of thing. The second thing I would say is that this software is also being able to automate a huge amount of kind of like simple kind of tasks, whether it's across service or support or marketing or whatever it might kind of be. And it's changing the nature of work. So back to the point, the question around uncertainty is that we have to remember that we're moving from an era where, of like, say, the last 3 or 4 decades, where we sort of knew what work looks like, right? We knew what it meant to be a marketeer or a campaign manager or a customer service agent or X or Y or Z, right? We knew what that was. They used to change a little bit as kind of things and the environment kind of changes and technology changes. But now we're seeing a fundamental shift in that those roles, many of the more mundane or repetitive tasks are up for automation. And that's why I use the idea, like we used it as well, is that we feel like we're building the plane while it's flying. We're moving this from this period of certainty into one where we sort of don't know what the future of work looks like, and we're sort of trying to figure it out as we go. And I think there are clues around that in terms of what that means and how we can think about it. I remember going to the Adobe Summit event earlier this year, and I was able to listen to NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang speak to the Adobe CEO Shantanu Narayan, and they were talking about Jensen was talking about this idea of the way we need to think about how we use generative AI and agentic AI in terms of the future of work. We need to kind of decompose how we think about work into 2 different components. When you think about purpose and task. And what will happen is that as the automation and the models improve and mature, the amount of work that we do that is task focused is likely to diminish, and it will free up more of our time to do more of the purpose related work, which is more strategy, emotional engagement, creative storytelling, all that type of stuff. And people might be thinking, oh yeah, that's a really interesting concept, but what does it mean? Well, I spoke to another guy while I was at the same event, this guy called Phil Regno, who is a partner at PwC. And he said, I actually think, I really like the idea, but it's the way I think about it. He said he used a Pareto principle idea. So that 80-20 rule. He said, currently, I think we spend about 80% of our time doing task related work and 20% of our time doing this sort of like purpose related work, the strategy and the storytelling and the creative side of things. He said, if we think about the power of this automation, there's a potential that we're going to flip that, where we end up only spending 20% of our time doing the task-related stuff because we're being helped by all of this automation. And we'll end up spending most of our time, the 80% of our time, potentially doing more of the purpose-related stuff, the strategy, the storytelling, the engagement type of stuff. And I think that's a really interesting kind of like way to think about it. And look, the problem is because we have no map, we just need to figure out what's the frame that we're looking at and learn as we go. Because there's two ways that we're going to react to this. We go, fine, I don't know what's going on, but I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to explore and I'm going to figure things out as I'm going to go. Or somebody's going to get to the end of the road and just be like, oh, stopped, stuck in the tracks. Now, if you're stuck in your tracks, everybody's going to be passing by you at varying speeds, kind of things. So my advice is that even though we don't know what that road is, as we're going down it, we still need to travel. And we still need to be moving forward. And so thinking about how you decompose, how you use technology, and how you can decompose your work into that purpose and task, and think about how that kind of changes and what it looks like now and what you might want to look like in future, and go in small increments to be able to plan it out. In doing that, you'll decrease the uncertainty in your own mind and allow you to move kind of forward.
Really, and Adrian, you know what? The amount of AI webinars or books or white papers I'm reading, that's a very positive insight from PwC. It really is. That, I think a lot of us who are on this call today would be very strategic focused. And for if AI is going to remove the task focus and allow us to do more deep thinking and directional thinking, that's a wonderful future from our perspective and for many people who are on this. So it's great to hear that. That's a lovely insight that I wasn't expecting today. So nice way to kick off that we're already finding wonderful outcomes from this process.
Well, that's enough then. Shall we just end it there and just all go for lunch?
1-0. Okay, we'll take that and go. We're going to give everybody their day back. See you later.
Drop the mic. I'm off.
That's okay. No, listen. I think one of the things you start to talk about there is, what are our roles in this area? And I suppose the key question for me, on behalf of most of the people who are on this call today, is basically, how do we become greater captains or stewards of this technology?
So, first of all, I think that I go back to the thing that I say that I'm only interested in, and that's outcomes. I think that's the thing is, in the midst of all the maelstrom of news and all these different sort of things about technology and what it can and what it can't do and all these different things, we have to remember what we're here to do. We're here to leverage the technology, which is a tool, to drive better outcomes.
Yeah.
And I think we need to stay focused on those outcomes. Because if we think about the potential of this technology, we think about kind of what's happened in the last kind of few years. What's shown is what research has shown, particularly studies by from last year, studies by Accenture and IBM, is that they've shown that organizations have found it hard to scale this technology, to implement it at scale, and to drive significant enterprise value at that. And I think there's a number of reasons for that. The Accenture research went on to say that one of the biggest reasons why organizations have failed to do that is because of a talent and capability gap. And the way I kind of think about that is that I think there's an AI literacy gap. I think there's a lot of people who think they know about this technology and what it can and can't do. But I don't think they know enough about it. They're just like, well, we need to kind of throw, the terms get thrown around. And I don't think we're necessarily understanding the problem enough and thinking about what are the right sort of tools within that sort of toolbox we're using to drive these kind of outcomes. So I think there's an AI literacy thing. And the Accenture study actually went on to say that that's the biggest opportunity that is there to enterprises, those that build the right sort of leadership capability, the leadership skills, the talent kind of pipeline to leverage this technology, are the ones that are likely to put clear water between them and their competitors. And I think this is not new. I think we've seen this sort of stuff before. mean, I remember if you think back, I've got enough gray hair to show for this, but I remember when sort of big data and big data analytics burst onto the scene like 10 years ago. And everybody was talking about, oh, we need to be kind of like data led and a data driven decision making organization. And I'm like, yeah, brilliant. That's great. And the problem is that organizations couldn't find enough data scientists to help them do that. They had all this data and they just didn't have the capability to process it, right? I spoke to a guy called Vivek Jetley from EXL about this, and he told me their researchers had shown that there was the demand for data scientists versus the supply of data scientists was outstripped by about 3 or 4x, as it were. So organizations need 3 or 4 more data scientists that were available. He said so that was a big thing, but that's a problem that you can sort through training and accelerated training and development and so on and so forth. He said, however, here's the bigger problem. The bigger problem that nobody talks about is that it was the lack of leaders that really understood data-driven decision making, what it meant, and like how to get the most out of these teams, how to understand what data they had, how to best use it, how to guide those teams, and then to act on those insights. And that gap was 3 or 4 times on that. So there was a massive kind of talent gap that set above the kind of data science gap. And I think we're seeing that replicated kind of right now in this AI literacy thing, that people are not educating themselves enough on what the tools can do. And in fact, educating themselves enough and then taking the time to understand the problem and thinking about what tools I need to do it. And so what we're in danger of doing is that we're in danger of having the tail wag the dog.
Yeah.
Right. And I think there's a thing that we can do to combat that sort of stuff. So you can take on your time to educate yourself and go read and talk to people and listen to stuff and take courses if that's your thing. But I think we also need to develop different leadership kind of behaviors in order to supplement that. And the way I think about it is that I think there's 3 different levels of leadership in this sort of like space that related sort of to data and technology. And the first level is where data informs us. So that's level 1. So we take the data and we use it to help us make decisions. And the second level is where we use, I call it like stories move us, because stories do. We are people as human beings. We relate to stories and they do move us. And so that level of leadership is where people go and gather those stories, whether it might be qualitative feedback or unstructured data, to actually hear the voices of customers and employees and things, and try and use that to fold it into their decision-making process. Because that is again a different type of data, but it's another kind of type of data, right? And then the third level is where experiences compel us. So, and what I mean by that is that when people get out from behind their dashboards and their spreadsheets and they're out of their offices and kind of out, behind their laptops and out of meeting stuff, I just go out into the world and see how things actually are, right? And because when we see things, when we hear, we try and maybe actually serve a customer or speak to a customer or speak to a colleague or watch a colleague or accompany a colleague on a visit, we see and experience kind of things that we can't unsee or unhear or unfeel. And when we see, more often than not, when we see those things as leaders, it collapses the distance between us and where the experience actually happens. And when we do that, then we generate this huge amount of insight that then compels us to move. And here's a brilliant example that I learned about recently that puts this into context. And this involves Virgin Atlantic. Now, Virgin I spoke to a guy called Neil Letchford, who's the VP of digital engineering across at Virgin Atlantic. And they were interested in building this kind of AI concierge on their website to help their customers make decisions about holidays and flights and all these different things, right? And it's a multi-agent architecture. And one of those kind of agents was this holiday agent. Now, they looked at kind of how to do that, and they looked at their data, this level one sort of like stuff. And they said, oh, we can see that the place where people spend the most or have the kind of the highest basket value of holidays is not on their website and it's not by their call center. Actually, it was in their retail stores. And they were like, oh, that's interesting. Now, rather than guessing about that, they kind of went, actually, I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to go and hang out in these retail stores. They're going to observe these reps and see kind of what it is they did that drove that kind of big, higher purchase value. And when they did that, they did it like, they figured out that these reps, in a really conversational way, wasn't a scripted sort of way, but when the conversational way, they were able to acquire 7 key bits of information about what their preferences were about holidays and stuff, and that they could build that into their package. They called that their minimum viable knowledge. And the only team was like, wow, this is crazy. What a great set of insights that you would never get from kind of like a piece of hard data, but they actually had to go there and observe it and try and codify it. They took that, stuck it into their AI kind of concierge and told it, it's like, here's what we'd like you to do when you have a conversation with a potential customer. We want, in a conversational tone, not in a completely unscripted, not Q&A sort of thing, in an unscripted way. We think that we should be able to acquire this sort of information, and we can use that to build a picture of what would be the most suitable kind of holidays for that. And they were able to do that. And you know what I love about that? I love the idea that you're just taking real time contextual intelligence and building it into a digital kind of product. And I think it's that level of type of leadership that is going to take real-time human experience and fold it into digital products, and you make the gap kind of like closer. Because I fundamentally believe this. I think there's to be successful in this kind of era right now, there's 2 types of AI. There's artificial intelligence and all the tools and technologies and all the platforms and things. And then there's another type of intelligence, which is AI2, which is agent intelligence. And I use agent as a proxy for your reps, your out in the field, your agents that are answering the phones, all of these different things. It's human intelligence and how you codify that human intelligence and insight, and how you leverage the power of AI. And if you put those 2 things together, I think you win.
I love it, and it's interesting. You raised the issue there of AI literacy, and it's something that the CX Academy would have a philosophy of. Particularly leaders, but most people in any organization, we are not expecting you to be able to code. We want you to have enough fluency to ask the right questions throughout the organization, which kind of leads into a third question here that I want to run by you, which is basically, how do we bring our staff along and ensure that we're not handing the kind of the keys of the brand new 16-wheeler truck to a learner driver? How do we do that?
So I love that analogy. And I think the bottom line, and this is a theme in kind of my thinking. I think we need to get better at telling better stories. It's always been my belief, well, for the longest time, that I think one of the biggest Achilles heels of brands when it comes to customer experience is they don't have a clear enough, sophisticated enough, or granular enough vision or story about what is the experience that they want to deliver to their customers.
Yeah.
Now, if you ask companies to go, or a brand, go like, "What's your customer experience vision?" And slightly tongue-in-cheek, I'll say that they'll tell me a whole bunch of different things, and I'll say, "Well, that's just a random assemblage of a bunch of kind of current buzzwords, which means nothing to nobody other than it just impresses your board." And my feeling has always been that unless we can tell a story about what experience that we would like to deliver across the different points of our customers' journey, and articulate what the human and tech balance could be or should be across those different points and how it changes for different types of customers. When you develop that sort of like a more detailed, granular sort of kind of idea, that story, that framework, it doesn't have to be right, by the way. It just has to be directionally accurate, because remember, it's a story. The thing that happens is people can see themselves in that story, right? They can go, oh, I then now can see how I play into that, what role I can play in that to make that successful, because then that helps you bring people along. And this obviously is also going to be informed, and it goes back to that whole AI literacy thing, because we have to understand the capabilities of technology and understand where we can utilize it to best advantage, and then marry that across. Well, what is it? How does that equate with our brand values, and does that kind of play in our business model and things like that kind of that feel right? But I think if we help tell that story and get people involved in telling that story and developing that story, then that will bring people play a big role in bringing people along. So let me share with you some statistics about why that's important and why it often gets forgotten, but it's really important. Many people will know that there's an old McKinsey study that says 70% of large transformation projects fail. And if you know anything about that research, or you get a chance to dig into it, what you'll find is that the reason why they fail is not because of the some of the big project mechanics around failure to deliver X, Y, and Z. It's like they fail because of lack of communication, lack of storytelling, leadership, those sort of things. However, here's the interesting thing, and I must kind of hat tip to Ricardo Semler that I spoke to the other day, who is the author of a book called Maverick. So if you haven't ever read it, then you should go and check it out, because it's completely mind-blowing, written in the 1980s. Anyway, that's an aside. I'm a bit of a fanboy when it comes to Ricardo, so I'm just going to like saying. But he told me other McKinsey surveys found that when you get your frontline involved in that whole transformation change projects, when they feel a sense of ownership, the success rates of projects go up to 70%. So it basically flips it.
Yeah.
Right. Here's where it gets even more. If you want, this is the bonus kind of bit. Is that, but when you get all of those people not just involved in not just feeling a sense of ownership, but when you get them involved in facilitating and implementing that change, then success rate goes up to 79%.
Wow.
So don't do things to people, do things with people.
Yeah.
And so that's all kind of that's all. I mean, that's all great, and so that's a key thing about bringing people along. However, there is a key risk in all of this sort of stuff when we fold in the AI things. And forgive me, I remembered being in another role kind of like years ago, and I was doing some broadcast media training, and they told me not to wave my arms around. That's completely anathema to me. So forgive me for the kind of the jazz hands kind of on this. Anyway, the key risk I was about to tell you about was this technology is improving so fast, and its capability is kind of mind-blowing in many ways. And the thing that we have to be careful of is that it's based around this idea of a centaur partnership. And what that means is that, and the idea originates with Gary Kasparov back in 1996, I think it was, when he lost to Big Blue at chess. It was the IBM chess playing computer. And he mused that this was inevitable, but actually we would move to an era where we'd end up playing what he called advanced chess or centaur chess. And that would mean that we would see an era where human beings are playing against other human beings, but using computers as aids, as it were. So the human being would set the strategy, and the computer would take care of execution and make sure no mistakes were made. But if you blow that up into current sort of contexts, and I learned about this from a writer called Cory Doctorow, talked about this centaur partnership, was the idea that if we was Cory Doctorow and also Ethan Zuckerman, and as the capability of the technology kind of increases, we have to make sure that we are improving our own capability to be able to be good stewards or good drivers of this. Hence, go back to your analogy, is like, you wouldn't give a learner driver the keys to a 16-wheeler truck, right? Because they're not a great driver. So the question is, how do we become great drivers? And that's a key risk in all of this sort of stuff. And we see some of this sort of stuff playing out with, how many young graduates are struggling to get jobs kind of right now. So the thing about we have to think about is that, how do we learn in this environment? How do we build those mental models, those frameworks that allow us to discern what good looks like? Because if not, we're just going to become increasingly reliant on the models to do all our thinking for us, and we become a poor partner in that central partnership.
Yeah. It's interesting. Siobhan, I'm going to hand over to you, if you don't mind, because you tripped over some very interesting subject matter that kind of bring that whole premium of human piece together.
And I'm going to bring it back to that human premium in a second, and it's related to that. But God, there's so much that you said, Adrian, there that I would love to delve into more if we have time. But you talked about people organizations not having that granular enough vision of their customer experience, and what we're seeing is, and I suppose the message that we're trying to get across to people is that having an AI strategy without involving and focusing on your customer in that is absolutely a risk. And we live in an age where our customers, most organizations' customers, are having more interactions online or digitally than they are with a human. So actually, our tech people are becoming our new front line, and they need that deep knowledge around customer and what's most important, and how to get, as you mentioned there, that balance right between tech and the human touch. So it's just such an interesting area. And we're hoping to give a shameless plug now, we're hoping to, and we're in the process of developing a course that will give that audience and who aren't traditionally as close to the customer a greater knowledge of the customer, and to get that granular vision of the customer experience across the organization. But let me bring it back to that, what we're talking about today, and that is the rise of the human premium. And this is something we've been seeing over the last number of years with the tech companies we've been working with and the other companies across every different sector. And that is the rise of the human premium in terms of, as digitalization, as AI evolves, as consumers, we've so many interactions digitally, but actually that human connection and that interaction with a human is becoming a premium offering. And some organizations are, I suppose, wondering what do they do with that, or how do they manage that? Is it just a cost-cutting exercise? But actually, IKEA are fantastic and have a fantastic case study of where they've invested their people and reinvested that, actually increased their ROI. So what they did is they introduced AI to, and what they did was they actually replaced 8,500 customer service jobs. But rather than laying off those 8,500 people who've been replaced by AI, they actually saw an opportunity, and they looked at all of the queries that AI couldn't help with, and what were the themes, what were the trends, what customers really need help with. And actually, a lot of it was around interior design advice, given that they're a home furnishing company. And they retrained 8,500 of their employees to interior design, and that service has pulled in an extra over almost $1.5 billion in revenue. So an amazing case study of it, and it's something that organizations are really struggling with. What's your view on that and that human premium in today's world?
I love that example. You know why? Because that is related to an idea called service dividend. Which is completely is something I learned from Tom Egemeyer at Zendesk late last year, and I think and it's just a great term to describe what's going on. And I think because what's happening is we're seeing the technology is as it is implemented well, as it matures, as it becomes more capable, it's presenting organizations with choices, right? About what sort of, if they free up capacity, what does they allow it to do it? Now, some people are going, oh, thank you very much, I'll take that and I will pocket that kind of thing, and I'll see you later. And we've seen people people almost trying to over-index on that, go like, we're going to have everything that's automated, and then they go, oh, it's not as easy as we think, and then we have to roll it back a little bit. And you're still going to have people that are going to try and do that because they are driven more by the financial returns than anything else. And that's their choice. And that's fair enough. It's a choice. They go this way. However, there is another choice. And the other choice is, I don't have to just go and release that or pocket that cost savings or reduce my headcount. I can take that and go, what could I do with that freed up capacity? Exactly what IKEA kind of did. And we're seeing that increasingly. People are going, because they're realizing, they're going, two things. One, it provides an opportunity, but two, letting go of skills and then rehiring them is an expensive business, right? And so I think there's this choice, the service dividend idea. So you can take it, you implement this, it produces a dividend. It's up to you to choose how you use it. You can take it and you can pocket it, say thank you very much, or you can go, I'm going to reinvest it and think about what I'm going to do with it. I have one example, which is slightly different to the IKEA one, but it's in the same sort of vein. One e-commerce firm, and they were not as big as IKEA, because IKEA are mammoth. This was like one smaller firm, and there might be some people on this kind of call that might empathize with it. So they're a smaller firm. They are e-commerce firm, and their support team were, busy. They're brilliant, but they're busy. They were getting smashed by incoming queries from emails and messages and chats and all these different sort of things. And they were always kind of on it. But then they kind of thought, well, actually, can we leverage this technology to try and automate a whole bunch of this sort of stuff? Some of the simple stuff, the tier 1, some of the tier 2 sort of stuff. And they did. They were able to do that, and it freed up a huge amount of capacity. And rather than actually just reducing the headcount or redeploying some people into their business, they asked themselves, well, what could we do with that? And guess what? They decided to turn the phones on. And the rationale was people were like, oh, but that's an expensive channel. They were like, and we don't care. They decided that turning the phones on was something that they'd always wanted to do, but never been able to do because they didn't have the capacity to do it. And 3, it was aligned with their brand, that they wanted to develop better relationships with the customers. And to do that, one of the best ways to do that was to do that via the phone. And so they just basically piled onto the phones, opened up the phone lines, and then allowed them to solve more complex problems, build relationships with their customers, drive greater loyalty, greater revenue, all of those different things. It was a choice, but it was a strategic choice. And so I love the IKEA example and the example I've shown, because actually that's the thing. It's like, this is where we were talking about the sort of purpose and task thing, kind of like, and when I talk about sort of like strategy and creativity and storytelling and engagement's the really important bit in the service sort of like space, is making a time to engage with a customer is probably one of the biggest investments that you're going to make, but probably one of the most important investments you're paying. And that's the human kind of premium. The idea that it's difficult to get to talk to somebody right now in this whole experience sort of space means it's a rare thing. And if you can leverage the technology to try and increase the opportunity that you get a chance to connect with your customers and build that relationship, I'm not sure you're going to go far wrong.
Yeah,
it's been something we support all our lives, Adrian, where I think recently, Siobhan, you and I were working on a workshop with a large enterprise, and at the end of 2 hours of workshop, they brought in 5 customers for all of their leadership team to ask questions of. It was so powerful, physically having them in the room.
But that, again, is that kind of, remember the leadership sort of levels?
Yeah. Level 3.
Level 1, level 2, level 3.
Absolutely. No, it's beautiful. Sorry,
Uh,
Siobhan, back to you. Pardon
No
me.
worries, no worries, Adrian. And that example that you shared there, where they said we'll switch the phone back on, you bring me back to a previous life when I managed a contact center many moons ago. Won't tell you how many years because I'll age myself. But the challenge was always we wanted to do proactive contact with people. We wanted to reach out to them, but the capacity just wasn't there because we were firefighting on a daily basis, as most people in the contact center are. And what would happen was when it would get busy, the outreach programs would be switched off and they'd be deprioritized. But we knew that they were adding so much value when we did them, when we had the capacity. So actually doing that is just to be able to have the capacity to do that and the ability to do that. I think we have to flip the how we're viewing AI and see the positives in that and see it as that partner. But you also mentioned there about letting people go and rehiring is a really expensive business, and we've seen from Gartner they've made a prediction that 50% of the companies that are reducing their headcount due to AI are probably going to have to rehire those for similar roles by 2027. And there's a couple of different reasons why they're putting behind that. One is that strategic shift. They're realizing that they need to move from just a purely tech-driven approach to a human-centric, customer-centric approach in their AI strategies. And the other part of it is maturity gap. Maybe AI isn't quite as mature as they think it is, or maybe they didn't. Maybe they overestimated. Meta is a fantastic example of that recently. But the third reason that they're saying behind that rehire is a changing talent profile and a focus on emotional intelligence and the need for that emotional intelligence. From what you're doing, do you think businesses are rediscovering that emotional intelligence is actually a competitive advantage?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think that one of the things I would say about kind of emotional intelligence is that it's a key skill, right? But it's again, it's an input. It's an input into the kind of the experience that we deliver, the outcomes that we deliver. And the bottom line is experience is the game, right? At this point, robots don't have bank accounts. And so they might do kind of when we all get our own kind of customer kind of like AI agents, as it were, and they do all our shopping for us. But right now, we as human beings are the ones that buy things, and the experience that we have is the thing that kind of is oftentimes the differentiator, and how we can use emotional intelligence in the most appropriate sort of way can be the thing that makes or breaks it. Now, I should point out, however, when people think about emotional intelligence, it's not that you go. Some people kind of think, oh, that means we're going to take longer, have longer calls. I'd be like, oh, Siobhan, how are you feeling? Oh, I get that. That's kind of like, yeah. You're like, no. If you think about it from a perspective, it's contextual. Emotional intelligence is contextual. That's why it's intelligent, right? So if like somebody is in a rush and has a crisis, they don't want you to be going, oh, how are you feeling about that? You're like going, no, I need an answer like this. And so being short and direct and to the point is an emotionally intelligent
response.
Yeah. And that might not be the most appropriate response in a completely different context.
Absolutely.
And this is the thing that so when people think is that our problems are that we end up being reductive with much of this sort of like stuff. We go, oh, we need to be better at that, or we need to be better at that. No, understand the problem. Understand what it is you want to kind of deliver, and think about all the bits and pieces that you need to feed into that in order to facilitate a positive delivery of that. And so, yes, I think being emotionally intelligent, because being an emotionally intelligent kind of brand is going to help in that, but it has to be in service of the experience. I think that's the bottom line.
It's interesting, and I have two more questions, and we're running tight on time here. But I think emotional intelligence has been able to recognize those situations and be able to react immediately, and that's, I think, one of the key elements. And you're right, Siobhan. I would support what you're saying. I think a key differentiator, emotional intelligence, really feeds into that. I mean, everybody can Yeah, will you be able to differentiate based on your AI supply? Nah, and, others will follow those strategies. But the
But if I
ability
may,
for
if I may quickly, I think the key part of that is a lot of times people will almost again take a reductive approach to that. I do think that and the training and the capacity building and all these different things is absolutely important. What's a key support structure around that is you have to have leadership that enables and facilitates kind of people to be able to respond in a contextually appropriate manner.
Yeah.
And that has to come through training and capacity building and all these different things. And I use this very quickly. I use this kind of the reason why emergency services don't talk about response times rather than reaction times is because response times are considered, because they've trained for and they've prepared for these things. Yeah. Reactions is like it's an emotional sort of thing. Mm-hmm. So when you think about emotional intelligence, it can't be an emotional response. It has to be, a reaction. It has to be a response, because you have to understand the context and then figure out what to do. And you only do that through training and practice and capability building and support, particularly from a leadership level.
Can I move into an area that isn't discussed much in the whole AI debate? And it's really about, the fact that do businesses today actually realize the potential for AI to become more expensive than the humans it's replacing? Is that something you've anything to think about or to share about?
I think we're starting to kind of see if you pay attention to the news, or maybe you don't because you're hiding away under a bushel somewhere because it's just all too much. But I get slightly nerdy about that and pay attention to it. And there's lots of stories that are coming out where companies are getting burnt by their inference bills that are coming through their AI model usage. And I think the reality is that we are using many of these kind of models, and their cost of them are being highly subsidized so far. And it's not clear what the true cost of the use of some of these models are kind of right now. And there's Gartner research that shows that there's a possibility that they built out a scenario that said if one support organization automated 50% of its queries, and then through that they folded in new license costs, inference costs, new talent costs, and then kind of took in the maybe a reduction in headcount as well. There's a scenario is that if they would end up, if you were a business that did that, you could potentially end up building a more expensive service operation than you had when you started. And so what's clear is that it's not going to become the cost-saving panacea that everybody thinks it's going to be. It's more complicated than that. But within all of that, I can't feel like I'm a scratch record right now. I think that one, we must remember that the technology is a tool. It's a tool to help us solve a problem that we face in terms of driving better outcomes. I think there's a danger that everybody's rushing in to take this one approach, which actually doesn't make a lot of sense if you step back and you think about it. For example, many people are going, oh, we need a conversational interface on the front end of our website that's driven by generative AI. And the problem is many of these kind of solutions don't have memory built into them. And so you maybe have 1,000 customers that come and ask the same question, and it's in about slightly varying kind of tones. But if it has no memory built into it, then the potential is that you pay for that 1,000 times, rather than taking a different approach, which might be, I don't know, a generative AI, predictive AI kind of blend with a bit of memory, kind of throw it in that says, oh, I recognize that question. Here's the best response that we've had for it before, based on our learnings and stuff. And so you end up with there's economies of scale in it. So 1,000 customers can come in and ask you about that, and you pay for it once.
Yeah.
Right. And so there's this kind of, again, it's this literacy sort of thing that comes up, is like going, we need to, in the words of Henry Rollins, former lead singer of Black Flag punk group, when we asked what the meaning of punk was, he said, question everything. And that's our role, right? Is to be curious to learn and to question everything, because that's what we need to do when we are in pursuit of driving these better outcomes.
I love it. And listen, leads on to the final question we ask of all our guests, Adrian, which is sharing those 3 or 4 killer tips to help attendees build the next stage of their own AI slash human experiences. Would you finish off with some tips that you would be willing to share with them?
Yeah, of course. I keep banging the drum. First one, learn, and keep on learning. I mean, this is it. It's like at no time, given the level, the place of, we're moving from a period of certainty into uncertainty about the changing nature of work and all this, the explosion of this technology and the possibility and churn that it offers, but potential churn that we're facing as well. Keep learning. Second one is like envision the future, but do it collaboratively. And tell that story, take your people with you, but then help involve them in building it collaboratively again, and help them use them to build it, or build it with them. Because if you do it together, then you can achieve huge amounts of things. And then the third one, I would say, don't just buy tools and then wonder what to do with them. Have a clear idea what you want to kind of achieve and where you want to go, and think about how you can use those tools to help you achieve that. And if I may, I've got 2 bonus ones.
Throw them in. I love it.
Bonus one, stay focused on the outcomes. Repeat exactly what I said at the beginning. Kind of customer, employee, and business. Look to try and achieve the trifecta. And if you do that, you're not going to far wrong. And sort of related to that, and many CX leaders are facing the challenge around proving the ROI of their initiatives. And I think that you build ROI through, primarily you can build it through developing relevance within your organization. We have to remember, as customer experience professionals, we are in service to experience. And so help other people kind of drive better outcomes. If you do that, then you increase your organizational relevance, and then you'll be able to improve ROI.
Love it. Love it. Love it. Thank you so much, Adrian. And we're tight on time, but I know there's a ton of questions. We're not going to get through them all today, but Louise, may I bring you in, please? Is there anything there that's outstanding that you could fire at Adrian from those questions?
Yeah.
Do you want to jump in, please? Thank you.
Yeah, so Margarita says, I'm the co-head of a customer support team and slowly starting to introduce AI tools to improve efficiency. There is some hesitation from my team on this. How can we encourage teams to confidently use AI tools? I'm thinking of your 80/20 example, where a lot of agents' work is the 80% task-based work, which could potentially be automated.
Right. So I would say get people involved with how they do that. I mean, I remember telling a story at an event, and I asked I was talking about kind of chatbots, particularly automating the front end of customer kind of queries. And I said, the technology is amazing, but many people are failing to kind of use it. And I said, my position was like, how many people have got? I asked them, how many people have got chatbots on the front end to try and help serve customers? Almost all the hands went up. And then I said, okay, second question, how many of you, and second question is like, who are the customer conversation experts in your business? Who are the people that speak to customers the most frequently in any organization? And they were like, And I said, customer support. And they were like, yeah, that's true. How many of those kind of folks were involved in the design and the implementation of your chatbots? Tumbleweed. It was like nobody was out, because IT tends to do it separate, in isolation from that. So if you want to deliver success and take people with you, get them involved. Get them involved in designing the solutions that are going to, one, benefit them, but also affect them as well. Because the more people understand something, the more likely they're gonna get behind it and adopt it.
Love it.
Yeah, great. So we have another question from Maria. She says, the McKinsey study numbers drew my attention, and I love that there is data to back up what I believe for a long time, which is that companies need to involve frontline staff in their CX initiatives. from early stages, not only when everything is already designed and imposed from top to bottom. My question to you, Adrian, is from which phase would you say that frontline staff should be involved in such initiatives? My take is that if healthy two-way communication is in place, many such initiative ideas could actually come from the frontline staff as they see firsthand all frictions and issues clients have, not management from headquarters and in the reports only.
Yeah, I mean, I would say as early as possible.
Yeah.
I mean, because if it's not right at the get-go, then it's going to feel like we're coming with this message, and then we kind of like we want to impose it potentially on you. And so I would say as quickly as you can and as early as possible, get people involved. And actually, there's a great example from the old Toyota system. We talked about going to the Gemba. And it's the idea that you just go and watch and listen and observe and learn. And sometimes what you need to do to get people involved is not shroud it in a project. Just go and listen and talk to and observe and understand. And then use that as inputs into a bigger project. And then just keep people going, keep it going, keep it rolling. And so to the person who asked the question, I think it's Maria, as early as possible.
Brilliant. And we would support that too, Adrian. We see it happening all the time, and it's a great question. Listen, there's many, many questions here, and I'm conscious of time. A number of people, Adrian, are asking if they wanted to get in touch with you. We have on the chat here your LinkedIn profile, your blog, your podcast, etc. So if anybody wants to get in touch with you, should they just do that through LinkedIn? Is that the best way to do so?
LinkedIn or on my website, there's my email address and my phone number. In fact,
Great.
I tell you what, kind of, I challenge people, kind of, stand out from the crowd and send me a message, kind of text me, or kind of email me, or WhatsApp me, and someone just say hello, or give me a call. Let's just say hello, because it builds relationships.
Lovely.
And I would be in the same boat. Is that because we're coming from a similar era? That we do prefer when somebody might pick up the phone, you get a phone call. Oh my gosh. It's lovely. It's lovely. No, I get it. Adrian, thank you so much. Absolutely brilliant. You've knocked it out of the park. There's some really, really interesting information there. Siobhan, I love the story around IKEA. I know that you and your team are putting together a proper case study around that. And I think what we will do is we'll make sure we're sharing that with everybody involved today. It'll be some time before that's complete because we're interviewing people, etc. So from that perspective, that'll be a beautiful piece of information. And Louise, as always, thank you so much for getting us all here. It ain't easy. We're all busy, etc. But Adrian, superb. Thank you so much. And we'll be in touch with you shortly. Everybody else on board, you will get your recording. There's lots of links, etc., that we will include with that. And again, if you have any further questions, pick up the phone and call Adrian. Pick it up the phone. There you go. That might work.
Adrian,
goodbye, everybody. And again,
Michael, thank you.
Thank you. And listen, there's everybody, Adrian, there. Thank you. Super insightful session, thought provoking, and this is what we knew we would get from you. So thank you so much.